Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks, failures, and challenges become the stepping stones for growth, clarity, and purpose. I'm your host, Ezekiel, and today we are joined by Oscar Luna. He's a podcaster, a children's book author, and a fierce advocate for men's mental health. Growing up in the South Bronx, trauma was as natural as the air he breathed, culminating in the severe childhood trauma of being molested by a family member. For decades, he carried the silent, crushing weight of that experience. During the pandemic, a profound realization at the exact building where his trauma occurred sparked a massive healing journey. He launched the FYI, I Am Damaged podcast to highlight the mental strength of those who are healing. And he recently authored the children's book, Logan, The Strong-Minded Little Elephant, to help families foster emotional regulation. He joins us today to discuss breaking the cycle of silence, overcoming deep-rooted fear, and the messy reality of trauma recovery. So, Oscar, I am indeed honored and excited to welcome you to FailCraft. Thank you very much for joining us here today, sir.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm ready to get right into it.
Let's dive in. I've been looking forward to this conversation, Oscar. So, you carried the silent weight of your childhood trauma for decades. During the pandemic, while working a delivery gig, you found yourself standing at the exact building where that trauma took place, and you experienced what you call a universal download, to start your podcast. So when you were standing in the very place, where you were broken, what was the breaking point where you realized you could no longer carry the pain in silence and had to speak up?
It happened in stages, and being at the place where my trauma happened decades later, it was an eye-opening situation. Now, it helped me, but for other individuals, it can crumble them, it could destroy them. It can have them retreat into something that is not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. Food, alcohol, women, drugs, harder drugs. And for me, I guess because since I have been through so much, I guess you would say self-torture and just dealing with this only on my own, not without any help, therapy or anything like that, it seems like my life was ready for something different. Not a change, but at least something different. And this was basically one step after another. People have to realize that it's rare to not have everything happen all at once. You have to identify, if I am affected by something and I do want to be a better person from that, then it may happen in stages. You do have some people, it happens all at once, and they have to deal with it as it comes through. I had to deal with it in stages. So not having to retreat after I'm put in a position to be in the same building, same floor, but not the same apartment as my trauma happened, but to not freak out by it, not to do the same thing people normally do, run away, ignore it, temper it with, illegal substances or something else, or, food or whatever. So like I said in many times in interviews when I'm doing my own thing, I told my wife, I texted her, I said, hey, look, I don't want to come home. This is what's happening and I'm okay. So she wouldn't worry, because I was okay. I didn't know what to think. Before, it was responding in a certain way, in a negative way, lashing out or things of that nature. I'm sure people can be used to that when they've gone through trauma and understand that when they revisit it, they know the response. And I went somewhere, I believe it was a park. I've been trying to figure out where I was. I'm looking through my GPS history, text history, and it's like I don't remember where I went. Anyway, when I was there, like I said, it just came flooding in. I would say it was just somebody just opening my head and saying, ooh, here you go. And it was It was weird. It was weird. And thinking of it, weird because of it came through clearly. Like somebody was whispering in the back of my head, like, this is what you're going to do. This is the name of the podcast. This is where you want to focus on, how you want to, you've dealt with a lot of things and you're so wise to other people. Now it's time to take it on a more massive scale rather than a one-on-one with those that just cross your life path. And it was just so, it's one of those, if you've ever had a moment, Ezekiel, where you will never forget it, that it's just a situation, positive or just, somewhere in the middle, and you're never going to forget it. A lot of people have those, damn near everybody. And I will never forget that. I'll never forget that just flooding of information in my head. And talking to people who have that, you see it in their eyes, and you know that they're like, oh, I know that look. I know that look. And going through that, even then, I kind of theorize, like, what if it's my future self, my future spirit, in a more better place than I am in now. Basically saying, look, we have to start this in this way at this moment, in this point in time, to reach where we are now. And I equate it to that. There's a show that came out a couple of years ago, where they couldn't go back in time physically, but their consciousness, they can send their consciousness back in time. And with a lot of things that are being theorized now, again, with quantum physics and things of that nature, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if you can tap into your consciousness across time and say, hey, look, dude, we got, like, you get a sort of push to be like, I got to do something better.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself in a better position 10, 20 years down the line, and you just keep telling yourself, I wouldn't have gotten here if it wasn't for that. And you repeat it. You try to encourage people, like, you have to find your way, your journey. I tell people, you got to be curious about your healing journey. And maybe that spark just turned into an explosion. And that explosion turned into, hey, look, you're going to get this, and you need to start here. Starting this, coming across other individuals, going on a healing retreat, and being able to just release it. Because you have to release that trauma to understand that once that capstone is released, there's going to be a lot of stuff underneath that. And that's going to also take a massive amount of your time, of your energy, to have to deal with that. I had to deal with more anger issues. I had to deal with being disciplined in life, lack of. And I'm being more disciplined now, also working on my health and being a better father, a better homeowner, a better husband. And a lot of these things were falling by the wayside because of that one huge trauma. And so, like, things like, if people, like, don't disregard, like, maybe going on a retreat or something like that. If somebody it comes across, you do like a weekend or something like that. You never know what you can get from that, because that's the purpose of my podcast. I want people to, it's all positivity in a sense of the wisdom that people share. You can listen to the trauma, what they go through, their story, just to get an idea, but cherry pick the wisdom that they're offering to you and the way they see things. And that's what I want people to do. So you see these multiple episodes, and whatever interests you, I tell people, just take somebody might say something, you relate to this person in this situation. And then what's the next step? What's the next step? And rather than saying, oh, what's next, which some people can take it as a negative. I used to take it as a negative a lot. My wife used to be like, okay, what's next? What are we doing? What's next? And I'm like, it used to trigger me a lot. But you have to ask yourself, what's the next step with me being a different person? I wasn't the same person I am in my 20s or my 30s. I'm 47. And to be on a healing journey in your 40s is kind of wild. It puts you in a place to understand that, okay, I see things a little bit differently. I'm wiser in certain ways. So what am I going to do with this? I need to be a better person for myself. People always say, God's going to be there for you. But people always say God first, God first, God first, then my family, then me. Everybody always puts themselves last. And then they have to drag their ass out of their own stress to try and be a better person. God's always going to be there for you. You have to make sure that you're first within yourself. Honestly, this might sound weird to a lot of people, but not in a bad way. You have to be first before your wife, before your children. Why? Why is that? Somebody could be rolling their eyes like, what the hell is he talking about? Because if you or your significant other are not first within yourselves, then you're not doing you're not being the best person for them. When you're taking care of yourself, when you have self-care, when you're working on your discipline, you're working on your health, and you're making yourself a better person, mind you, not totally disregarding them, but to say, hey, look, I got to eat right. I got to work out. I have to, maybe you got a sauna, maybe do a cold plunge, maybe, do a walk, do something. Then you're making yourself healthy for them. You're doing that first for yourself to make yourself a better person for them, physically, mentally, spiritually. And
Absolutely.
you're putting your best foot forward. And if you're doing that, your wife's doing that, girlfriend is doing that, then everybody comes together as a better person. Conversations get better. Dealing with issues get better. Dealing with problems get better. And then your kids soak this up. Have I had my setbacks? Absolutely. Absolutely. But when you acknowledge those, it's best to do that, because when you acknowledge your setbacks or your failures, then you know where you can not make those same mistakes again.
All right. So, Oscar, you see, a person has to release trauma to be a better person, even as a dad, even as a homeowner, as you used the case of your example, as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a companion. So,
I released individuals. If an individual can release their trauma, just real quick, but it's about processing it. When you're ready, I was ready. And when you're ready, you'll release, but you at least have to start out with the processing of it. You have to acknowledge it. There are people out there who've been traumatized way worse than I have, but they don't acknowledge it. They act like it never happened.
Exactly.
It's that little dark spot in the back of their head that they're like, I'm never going to acknowledge this. I don't have to. That's the past. Okay. But if that's showing up and making you act a certain way towards people, making you hyper defensive and all these other psychological traits, you're not really, it's still affecting you.
So, yeah, exactly the same thing I was going to talk about. You say you have to start out with processing of the trauma. You have to acknowledge it. But, most times, most people, they try to numb it. People do things, you said earlier that people like to run away. They like to ignore it. They go into substance abuse or overeating just to numb that trauma. So, especially for men, listening right now, the ones who have buried their childhood trauma for decades. So how does that unresolved internal pressure, how does it quietly manifest and fracture their adult lives before they even realize what's happening?
How does it? In all sorts of ways. You've mentioned a bunch of them, so have I. But the main part of it is that it will always bubble up. It would always bubble up in the way you react to things, how you process information. I always take this from like one of my favorite comedians, and I don't know if you've heard of him, Bill Burr. He always jokes about, he's like, I said something, but then the way you're responding to me, it's because you're taking what I'm saying and you're cutting it up with all your childhood trauma, and you're responding with that. It's like that game, if you've ever played it, where I think it's called telephone or something like that, where you say a word, like you say pencil, and you whisper into somebody's ear, and they could say pencil speaker, and by the time somebody has like at the end, it's different. It goes from pencil to like a whole nother statement. But that's what people do in their heads when they're leading their responses or their processes with their trauma. I've been very, very defensive, very like, what do you mean by that? Or just not responding at all. And to do that, once you're able to stop doing that, when I listen to people now, I don't listen for keywords. I don't listen to defend. I don't listen to strike out at other people. It's like when you're in those relationships, and if you've ever had that where you're always have to be on the defense and you're telling someone, and then, all the past comes up, and it's like, wait, we were just having a conversation about what happened today. What are we talking about 6 months ago? And so acknowledging and processing and understanding what you're going through, it's a big mental feat to do. But once you do that and you have a conversation with somebody, you have a discussion, you have a debate, even an argument, it makes it a better process to say, you know what? I'm not going to take this conversation with the foundation of my trauma and just totally annihilate the person that I'm having an issue with. That will kind of just go by the wayside. And then you'll have the conversation you would love to have with somebody and not always be as defensive. I'm still learning that. I have issues with, if I have a conversation with my wife and she may want to play devil's advocate, and I'm like, okay, but you're not understanding my position right now. And I always feel like you're defending the other person and not me. So, but I get my concerns across. I let her know, like, this is how I'm feeling. For a person who hasn't been heard, it's very difficult for them to have a conversation. If you're a person that feels like, nobody's hearing me, nobody's understanding me, and then to have a conversation with someone else who wants to get a scope of everything and kind of doesn't do it the way you understand, it may feel like they're oh, this is another person I got to defend myself against. So it's very important that if you're on the other side of this, if you're not the person who is going like this or lashing out or things like that, and you're listening to someone like that, it's very important to be understanding, regardless of whether you agree or not, to understand the person, regardless of whether you think they're right or wrong. Person could be more relieved when they look at you and basically say, thank you for hearing me out. Yeah, what I did was wrong. Yeah, I kind of misunderstood the whole situation. That gives the person who was going through the issues more clarity to understand that, okay, this issue wasn't as big as I made it out to be. So to be heard really brings clarity to a situation.
Absolutely. So, let's talk about your podcast. FYI, I am damaged. I'd like you to tell us about it. How long have you been doing this podcast? Like the type of conversations, the guests you have on the podcast. And, yes, firstly, I'll ask the other question as a follow-up.
Well, it's of course, it's my fourth baby. I'm a family man. I have 3 boys. And it's a passion project, and talking with people from around the world. I think I managed to except for maybe Asia, I think I probably talked to people on like all continents. I don't know, Europe, South Africa, South America. Yeah, interviewed this guy from Brazil, Australia. So all over. And it's been wonderful because I'm selfishly doing it for me because it's part of my healing journey. I get certain things from every single person. In the beginning, you do what everybody does in the beginning when you start something. You lean on those close to you. So those early episodes were with family members, my wife's family members, and, speaking with someone who's a licensed clinical social worker, speaking to someone who lost twins in utero, speaking to friends who were abused as well and forgiven their abusers, like face to face, to then start discovering other individuals that I didn't know, and started interviewing people who wanted to advertise their book. The first person I ran into an issue where I had to take some time off. And then getting back to it, somebody just reached out to me out of the blue. Her name was Adrienne Caldwell. And she's like, I'm doing the whole podcast junket thing. She's doing a whole bunch, and she wants to talk about her book. And basically it's, she's survived suicide attempts. And it was weird to me because how do you speak with someone? When I learned why, like, part of the thing was like twice she put a gun to her head. She pulled the trigger. And there was a mechanical issue with the pistol that it didn't make it strike the round. If the gun was working properly, it would have blew her head off. But to pull the trigger twice, that's unheard of. To fast forward, there was this comedian I interviewed where he found out he was adopted at 50. There was another individual who traced his family back and wrote a book because he traced his family back to the Civil War in the 1800s. And he learned a whole bunch of things about it. I have lifestyle coaches, Mandy Hart. That was an emotional interview for me because she tells me she tells her clients, listen to this episode and see how vulnerable. It's like, this guy is supposed to be interviewing me. And she's like, see how vulnerable he is. And that helps their clients understand that, okay, I may not be alone. And there's someone out there might be going through the same thing as me or just something similar. And with the name, it doesn't mean I like that the name, it wasn't intended as that. I just saw it. Because when someone says the name, and I've had someone triggered by the name, they're like, oh, I'm not damaged. I mean, we walk around with a little bit of dents. Doesn't mean you're destroyed as a person. But if you're able to look at and read the name and feel a little bit uncomfortable, I'm like, you're dealing with something, or you may have gone through something that you haven't processed, or you're still processing. Come, take a look at a couple of episodes, see which one resonates with you, and see if it'll help you start or continue your healing journey. That's all I want. That's all I want people to do, because this is doing it for me. And when I come across stories, having someone who walked the 2,000-mile Appalachian Trail, I still got that episode in the can. I got to put it out. Rand Timmerman. He wrote a book. Him and his brother walked that trail that's in America. It's almost like 2,200 miles. And he never dealt with the trauma of being infantryman in the Vietnam War. Him and his brother were. His brother lost his wife. They had a bunch of kids. And by helping his brother, he helped himself. And talking to a Navy chaplain, keep forgetting the word, but he's a priest in the Navy, a Navy chaplain, where he wrote a book about moral injury. And it's an interesting subject of what these soldiers go through and what they have to deal with and process. Even some that have been or haven't been to war, which affects them to their core. And also there's other light ones. I had a Father's Day episode, and I wish I could remember each and every one of them. Cheryl, KK, and it's just like I have over 70 episodes. And even though that's kind of light work to somebody who may have like 200, 300, 400, I do long form. Some of them can be from an hour to 3 hours. And you'll get something to it. I don't want to distill it down and then have someone just say, okay, I'll take this condensed version. It's like, give your soul something to eat, to process, to digest. And hopefully you find your own episode that speaks to your soul, not just for entertainment, and helps you in an area that you didn't know where you need help.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. You really went into the depth of the conversations you have on the podcast and the wonderful guests you've actually brought on your show. So, you've said that starting your podcast, was like a passion project for you. It's part of your own healing journey, and you started the podcast. It was to help others, but it eventually was helping you, and it became the catalyst that helped you figure out things yourself. So, what's an uncomfortable, unexpected truth you had to confront about your own healing, while holding space for other people's pain and trauma?
That I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I know where I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm nowhere near where I want to be, and I know I have a lot more work to do. I have a lot more work to do for myself. I have a lot more work to do as a father, as a husband. I have a lot of work to do because it's not the easiest thing is to walk away. Easiest thing is to walk away. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with these kids. I don't want to deal with this house. I don't want to deal, with my friends. I don't want to deal with whatever. I opt to walk away. That to me, that is almost like it's almost like a living suicide. I can't, and I've never put myself in a position to have any type of suicide ideations. I mean, it sucks. You would always think like, what would the world be, without me? But to actually like put myself in a position to, have a weapon to my head or to, my arteries and just be like, you know what, I'm done with this. It has never been a driving force within me to do that to myself. And I hope that people in that position, like there's a better way. What's the term? Don't take a permanent action to a temporary problem. That's suicide in a nutshell. And these problems will be temporary. You're not alone. You're not alone. And I learned that I always big up in the States, there's a 24-hour hotline, 988, National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call them. You're not alone. If you're in the States listening to this, if you're in another country and they have anything that is equivalent to that, maybe that I got to see if that has, and maybe Ezekiel, maybe you can do that. Maybe you could check to see if they have an international number. Anybody who speaks English, maybe they have translators, like check. Or they have the same thing in your own country, check. Don't be dumb in searching when, you have a smartphone. It's like you have the internet, you have the world at your fingertips. Check. Your life is precious to your own self. Check. And in the States, I heard there was a 9881 for veterans as well of the military. So there has to be something out there, and I have to do the research as well. I'm talking to people in other countries. Do they have these same resources? Is there a nonprofit out there who does these things so heartfelt to help individuals out there? Everybody feels alone, and you're not. You're not alone. Not in the slightest. As a matter of fact, even if you go to family members, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable about how you're feeling. And you may be surprised of how someone could respond to that and say, well, I felt like that in the past too. Well, what did you do for it? I did this, I did that. I mean, I don't know if that's something that can help you out, but you have to figure out what can help you kind of change the tone in how your heart feels. And we see it within your emotions, within your thoughts. You're not alone. No matter how alone you might feel, you're not.
All right. So, Oscar, for someone listening right now in our audience, who is carrying a heavy, decades-old trauma and is absolutely terrified of confronting it today. So, what's a step, what an honest, vulnerable step they can actually take, to start processing that trauma, then acknowledging it in order to begin their own healing journey?
No, like you said, it starts with acknowledging it. It starts with acknowledging what you've been through. It can be painful, but that's short term. It's short term because for me, it was always painful. It would result in tears. It will result in a lot of pain in your heart, in your head. But to actually confront it, acknowledge it, and know that You know how a lot of people say they speak it out into the universe. What it was, instead of speaking out your pain to the universe, speak out that you want to heal. Whether it's to whatever your religious preference is, to your God, to universe itself. Once you start putting it out there that you want to heal, it always gives you what you're asking for. If you're always asking for misery, and then you see that misery keeps coming to you, maybe change the topic of conversation between you and the universe. Once I started saying, I want to be better, I don't want to keep feeling like this, things started happening in pieces and then, whoa, full blown. So maybe that conversation within yourself needs to be put out in the universe to say, you know what, I want to stop feeling like this. I want to be on the road. I want to be on a healing journey. And I want to get better. I want to see what's out there better for me. I want to experience other things. I want to feel life in a different way. I want to strengthen the relationships I already have. I want to make better friendships. I have someone that loves me and I want to return that same love back. Once you start speaking these out into the world, I just posted up something on Instagram. I created an image and I just added it to my stories today. And what it says was, I journal to a higher power. My voice is the pen and the universe is my paper. Now, people will journal silently. You could just go outside, put your feet in the grass, put your feet in the dirt, put your feet in the water, go to the beach if one is available to you. Go to a forest, you can have a conversation with nature. You're not crazy. You're connecting to where you came from. We all come from the dirt. We all go back to the dirt. When you connect to where you came from and have that heartfelt conversation of, I'm not in a good space right now and I want to be better. Can you give me something so that I can be better? And you always have that conversation and it will come to you. Done it a whole bunch of times. Journal to the universe along with a pen and paper there. That's why I came out with the book, because it's so unfortunate that a lot of children they're dealing with parents who are not even beginning their healing journey, and it reverberates out to their children. I've had people who read my book and basically said, like, I needed this as an adult, but to have this for a child, to basically read the strong I am statement. And it's basically saying, I am strong. I am safe. I can do this. It's hard enough for adults to do that, to tell themselves that they're strong, to provide their own safety, and knowing they can do something that might be a difficult part that is occurring in their life right now.
Mm-hmm.
But to start that within a child and not take away the ability for them to cultivate their own strength and safety so that they can do whatever they might think it's impossible when nothing's impossible. Empowering a child, that's like the best thing you can do, to know that I don't have to be afraid because I have leaders among me. I have secure leaders among me that want me to do better than they ever did.
Mm.
And that's
So,
how you build a legacy.
thank you very much for sharing that with us, Oscar. Now, I was gonna dive into talk about your book, but you already said a few things
Give me
about it.
good. Come
So,
at it. Come at me with it,
yep.
man. I do what you do. So it's like,
All right,
don't
let's do
worry
it.
about it, man.
All right. So, the book, Logan, the strong-minded little elephant. You told us about your motivation behind writing this book. I'd like you to tell us how breaking your own cycle of trauma fundamentally changed the way you guide children through their own daily fears and anxiety with your book.
Like I said, it strengthens their confidence to know that, yes, someone has my back, but I have my own back as well. Like, I'm strong enough to do this. A lot of people like to lead with saying, this is a safe space. And I get that. And people need that. What I would like to see as well on top of that is to encourage people to tell them, hey, look, you're strong. Everyone has an inner strength that they need to amplify within themselves. And when you do that, you create your own safe space. And when you create your own safe space, you become essentially unstoppable. Whether you succeed or fail, then you learn from your failures. You're on your journey. And by doing that, it empowers people. And then when you feel empowered, you know you're going to be around people who put themselves down in a negative way, because it's hard for them to be around empowered people. Because when someone's around empowered people and they don't feel too sure of themselves, they like to tear them down. But it's not about a tit for tat. Because when I see people like that and somebody wants to say, oh, well, but they're not perfect. They're this, they're that. And they just start tearing them down. It's like, well, okay, you didn't have to do that. But what are you going through that makes you see someone doing something positive and now you're negative towards them? Like, are you okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? I've seen people with, parental wounds that they carry around and all sorts of other traumas. And when they see someone who is in their power and they're shining, that doesn't make them feel well. And it makes them lash out at the person, maybe in a certain way, or does something that just comes off negative. And I want to change that. Coming from the culture that I've grown up in, you always get the people talking slick. You always get the people who want to say something negative, or like who this person thinks they are, think they all high and mighty, or, think they got their stuff together. And it's like, you don't really have to do that. Is the person very boastful? Is it saying, oh, I got my stuff together. Look at you. That's all. You on the block. You're not doing anything. You're not this. You're not that. Like, okay, then those are who you call sore winners. Like, okay, you're doing great for yourself. And then you're lashing out at the people, and everybody's lashing out at each other. There's a huge fight. It's like, okay, there are people who are bettering themselves, but they don't know how to sort of talk with someone or process them and just be an ear to listen and say, hey, look, I'm doing better for myself. And you may think I'm coming around here being boastful, but it's like, how can I help you? What are you going through? Are you okay? And a lot of people don't ask that. When you do that to a person and you show I like to say, I like to show my strength through vulnerability. And when you do that and someone is like, I had a lot of people tell me like, wow, you've been through what you've been through and you're a great listener. You're a great understander. You're a great processor of other people's situations and emotions, and you have patience. I'm like, yeah, because I've been slammed around by either other people or myself. So a person who's been traumatized usually knows what a traumatized person needs. And usually they just need an ear to be heard. And you can see the relief in a person when they're heard. And it's a cherry on top when they're understood. And then it gets back to my previous point where it's like, okay, thank you for doing that for me. And now I can see how me reacting in a certain way to a certain situation might not have put me in the best light. So I acknowledge that I'm wrong, but I'm wrong for these reasons. And yeah, it's one of those deals where doing that makes the connection so much better between a person who hasn't even started their healing journey.
All right, Oscar, that was such an amazing response.
Yeah, I know I'm coming with all this like heavy stuff, and you're like, how do I handle this dude? You know what I'm saying? But I mean, look, it's only it shows how far I've come, and I still have a long way to go. I still have a long way to go. I'm taking it's we're in August right now. I'm taking like almost 99% of the whole month off, except to do interviews like these, and I wanna. I'm doing the same thing. I want to do better for myself. I have a long way to go. I have a long way to go at the age that I'm at. I'm almost at my halfway point or less than that. And it just how it is, making a good relationship to your significant other work is the same relationship you have to your heart, your soul, whatever embodies you. That work with that internal relationship is just as deep, is just as all involved. It's very encompassing and it takes a lot of effort. You just got to find the best way for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us, Oscar. So to wrap things up here, for everyone listening who is ready to confront their past, they want to foster emotional regulation and they want to dive into your body of work. So where is the best place for them to go connect with your podcast and your book, or even maybe the possibility of having a conversation with you?
For right now, my best jump off point is my Instagram account. Same as the podcast, one word, FYI, I am damaged, only because from there, I have a link to my Linktree. So that's linktr.ee/FYI-IAD. Regardless, the link is there. And if you put it up there, I'll be grateful for it when you're posting up the episode. Because there is where I have the links to where I'm located on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Even then, you can look up Oscar Luna or FYI, I am damaged. And it'll route you to whatever is your flavor. You like YouTube, you like Spotify, you have an iPhone, Apple Podcasts. It has the links to my book. This is my first children's book. I have other books out there that I've experimented with releasing, coloring books to keep you busy and entertained, and, a resilience book. And other interviews that I've been on, which I'm cultivating now, and anything and everything is listed there. I'm working on my website, but you'll find the link to my book. You could do the same thing. You could look for Logan, the Strong-Minded Little Elephant on either Amazon or my publisher, Milton and Hugo. And I know a lot of authors listening to this, they know why I'm mentioning both of them, because it's a royalty thing, and they'll get that. It's Amazon, God bless them. They're a worldwide company, but they don't like to share profit. So, but I would love for for my children's book to get into more hands, to help shore up the hearts of adults and children all the same. I even created a song for the book, which is on my Linktree. So please, you can do your start off jump point at FYI I am damaged on Instagram. Please follow, like, subscribe wherever you see everything. You get the book. Please leave a review. And it's just a journey. And thank you for being a part of my journey, Ezekiel. Thank you for putting my journey out there for your journey, for your podcast. I really appreciate it. I don't want to take it over acting like I'm interviewing you or anything like that. But, that's where people can find me. Instagram, FYI, I am damaged.
All right, Oscar. I will be sure to add the links to your Instagram, your Linktree in the show notes of the podcast. So for the listeners, go check it out below in the show notes. Indeed, it has been an amazing time having this conversation with you here today, sir. And once again, Oscar, thank you very much for taking the time to join us on FailCraft.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.